With the Hurricane City tropical update for October 12th around 9 a.m. It's been about a month and a half since I've done an update video, and the reason is the Atlantic Basin has been slow this year. We're up to our 6th named storm, Tropical Storm Fay, which moved through Bermuda this morning. I'll get to that in just a minute. But other than Hurricane Arthur hitting the Outer Banks of North Carolina early in the hurricane season, it's been pretty quiet in the basin. Now, all the activity has been in the western Pacific and the eastern Pacific this year, and part of the problem is that the pressures have been above normal in the Atlantic Basin, and there's been a lot of dry sinking air out there, so there's been pretty unfavorable conditions along with wind shear in the Atlantic Basin, keeping the numbers down. But there is enough time left in the season here to probably have a few more named storms. In fact, there's an Invest 90L out there east of the Leeward Islands, and I'll get to that in a minute as well, that probably will be the next named storm, which is Gonzalo. So we'll see if that develops and heads towards Puerto Rico potentially over the next couple of days. But let's go ahead and take a look at the current position of Tropical Storm Fay. And there it is on the HurTrack program. It's just about 77 nautical miles to the northeast of Bermuda. And if we put it in motion, you can see that the system came up from the south. And the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center was for this to pass about 60 plus miles to the east of Bermuda. And that was in yesterday's forecast. And the system did not behave as expected. It was supposed to pass east of the Bermuda area and then give them some gusty tropical storm force conditions. But what happened is the system continued to move north, passed right over the island of Bermuda as a strong tropical storm, and they had wind gusts about 82 miles an hour at the airport in Bermuda. So trees are down everywhere. There's about 18,000 people without power this morning in Bermuda, so that kind of caught the people off guard, and I'm sure there's going to be a little discussion about this. And this just goes to show you that when you have a threat to your area, even the 3-day cone can sometimes be off by about 50 miles or so, and that can make all the difference in the world between sustained tropical storm or hurricane force winds and gusts. And they were pretty close to hurricane force winds on that island this morning because this took a direct hit. So hopefully they'll recover and get things back in order there. Now our attention kind of turns to Invest 90L. And here it is east of the northern Leeward Islands. The system is getting better organized by the hour, and it's in a favorable environment, very warm sea surface temperatures, which, by the way, the sea surface temperatures are not really a factor this year. They've been warm enough. It's just that the upper conditions have not been favorable. But this looks like it's going to go ahead and develop, and the dangerous thing about this system is if this gets upper level support, this thing could ramp up and even potentially become a strong tropical storm or a hurricane as it approaches the Puerto Rico area, for example, in a couple of days. So they need to pay very close attention to this in Puerto Rico. And in fact, probably by tomorrow or the next day, I'll begin to feature some of the islands in the Caribbean at Hurricane City, and we'll see what areas get directly impacted by this system. But everybody needs to pay close attention to what's going on. Now if we take a look, and let me switch back to the sources here. We have the European model showing, now this is going out to Monday, October 20th. It shows the system relatively weak over Puerto Rico and heading towards the Bahamas, and then it turns to the north and goes just east of Bermuda. So this could be another threat for Bermuda down the road as potentially a hurricane. But it looks like the Euro was pretty good on this system, by the way. The Euro predicted that Fay was going to come very close to Bermuda, and it actually did come right over Bermuda. And this time the Euro is showing whatever becomes Gonzalo is going to pass just east of Bermuda. And then, of course, what you also need to pay attention to is long range, and we're looking about 10 days down the road. Notice the low pressure down in the southwest Caribbean Sea, where my mouse pointer is down here. There's an area of low pressure, and all of the models are pretty much on board with something developing down here and then eventually moving north towards Florida. The question is it going to be embedded in a frontal zone at that time, or is it going to be purely tropical? There's a lot of models are indicating it's going to get stretched out and pulled into a cold front. So we'll see how that all unfolds. Here's the radar from Bermuda, and you can see Tropical Storm Fay pulling away. And you notice the center of circulation is well defined on the radar, and it passed again right over the island. and gave them very gusty winds overnight. So I think conditions will be improving in Bermuda today as this system begins to move off to the northeast. And here's the map at Hurricane City showing all of our systems out there. We have Fay pulling away. We have the low pressure area, which is soon going to become a tropical depression and or tropical storm. And notice the tropical models are all indicating this is going to make a turn after it affects Puerto Rico. Some of them take it north of Puerto Rico, some take it south. But people need to pay very close attention to these areas and these islands in the northern leewards here, because this is going to ramp up. That includes the Virgin Islands, all of Puerto Rico, and potentially even eastern Dominican Republic and the eastern Bahamas before it makes that turn. But apparently there's this large steering flow out here, like a big circle, and all these systems are just getting dragged to the north. They don't make it as far west as they make it around 70 west, and then they start to turn to the north, and that's been the pattern all this hurricane season, this constant troughiness out here causing everything to move to the north. So we'll see what happens with that. But here's our storm-centered satellite of Tropical Storm Fay, close to hurricane, moving away from Bermuda, and you notice the flow is kind of south to north here in the satellite image, so whatever develops down here is probably going to take that northerly track. Incidentally, my predictions that I produced on June 1st had Bermuda close to being in my top 5 this year, and I had Bermuda at number 6, as you can see here. But there's a large area of picks in my top 5 in South Florida. I think it's pick number 2 and number 4. I think we have Naples and Naples and Miami, are in my top 5. And then over here in Texas, we have the Central Texas coastline as a high threat this year. Neither of these areas have been affected this year, but that could change before the end of the season, especially if something develops down in the Caribbean. So we're going to keep a close eye on that. But right now, all focus should be on the northern Leeward Islands and Puerto Rico. Pay close attention to what's coming. You have this system out here, Invest 90L, getting better organized, and this is heading your general direction. For all the latest on the recovery from Bermuda, the current feature at Hurricane City is Bermuda. So we'll see how things recover there. They should get back on their feet in a few days. And our attention is now on Puerto Rico. That's it for now. Thank you again for visiting Hurricane City.